Well, if there's one thing people like me to review, it's a Japanese ship kit from Tamiya. Oh, there's one there. Hello, welcome to First Impressions and welcome to Model Kit Stuff. My name is Jason and today we're reviewing this. It's the Japanese heavy cruiser Mogami in 1:350 scale from Tamiya. Not the first time I've reviewed a Mogami, but first time I've reviewed this kit, which is number 23 in the ship series. Now, Tamiya do two different versions of this, and we have reviewed and built on the channel the aircraft carrying version. So this version is sort of her second iteration of three. So in this configuration she gets fairly heavily beaten up, limps home, and the damage is so much that they decide to convert it into an aircraft carrying cruiser. So with the back half pretty much from the mast backwards, just flight deck. And we've reviewed that before and we've built it on the channel. So if you're interested in seeing that, I'll try and remember to put a link in the bottom of the video. So this is slightly different to what we've done previously. The front half will be the same. But it's a Tamiya kit, and I have particular views on Tamiya kits, which I think we will tease out during the course of this video. So let's start with a little bit of history. So Mogami is the lead ship of, I think it was 6 ships in total, and started out life as a light cruiser. And then the guns were changed around and she was upgraded to a heavy cruiser when Japan decided to pull out of the Washington Naval Treaty. During the war, she saw action early in the war covering various landings, and then in the Battle of Midway, she was attacked from aircraft from, I believe, Enterprise, off the top of my head. And she took at least 6 hits that I recall. And her sister ship that was with her took several hits and blew up due to the amount of torpedoes and ordnance on board the ship. And she sank. Whereas Mogami jettisoned her torpedoes. And so, despite the hammering she took, she managed to limp away. So this is, we see her in her guise here when she was at the Battle of Midway, which I think is an interesting place to model her at, to be honest. She would then go on to be heavily converted after that battle, as her number 5 gun gets absolutely obliterated and she gets severely damaged, and that's when she becomes an aircraft carrying cruiser. So yeah, that's the basic history. So as far as this kit goes, it's a 2009 tool. So basically what they did was they released the last iteration of the ship, the aircraft carrying version first. Then they changed some parts to do this one, released it the same year, and then the following year I think they did the light cruiser actually. So there is 3 versions of the Mogami knocking around. This is a kit released in 2009, so we know it's the better detailed ships that Tamiya do, not like some of their very old stuff, which are getting a bit long in the tooth, to be honest. So yeah, we got some nice artwork on the front, shows her in steaming along the ocean with in company of a destroyer by the looks of it, or possibly a sister ship that's far away. It's a bit difficult to work it out, but yeah, it's a nice bit of artwork. Tells us it's 1/350 scale ship. Tells us that it's Japanese heavy cruiser. Says model may be assembled as full hull with display stand or waterline model. Photo etch parts included for enhanced detail. 2 EAN and 4 E13A aircraft included. Anchor chain and propeller shafts made with metal parts. So, all good. When we look on the ends, we have some information and an image of the boat, and it gives us a kit number of 78023. I think it's the same on both ends. Then on this side, we get a couple of profile pictures of the ship. So you can see there, no boot line, as is typical with Japanese ships. It's just the anti-fouling, then meets the overall grey. They're quite easy to paint, Japanese ships. It's a good place to start if you want to get into ships. And then on this side, we have an image of her on her stand and also in her waterline. It tells us that the kit contains part for one ship model. Picture depicts ship with separately sold degaussing cable set. That's really important, and we'll come back to that when we review. And then we have some close-up pictures of the kit, and finally an image of the included photo etch. Now I have aftermarket for this, but we'll look at that in a separate video. So that's our box. So without further ado, let's have a look at the instructions. Actually, before we talk about instructions, let's talk about how this is packaged. So we've got sprues in stapled bags, but look how loose it all is. We've got all this fancy packaging. We've got this inlay board that sort of sits on top of some of the sprues with other sprues on top. I like the fact that they tape the photo etch down to a piece of card, but to be honest, all of this is moving around and it does risk damaging. The cardboard box itself is quite thin. It is corrugated, but it's very fine corrugation, and the lid itself is not corrugated, so can be easily damaged, and in fact this one has a bit of crush damage on it. So packaging could be better. I'm not saying it's terrible, because at least it's not all in one bag, but it could be better. There is some risk in what they're doing here, and I'm not really a fan of the staples. I think it would be better if they heat sealed the bags, personally. Okay, let's have a look at those instructions then. Right then, our instructions. First thing to say is we do have a correction sheet. This was loose in the box, so we will tuck it in the relevant place when we get to it. Seems like the orientation of this part M4 is incorrect on step 18, so we'll have a look at that in a minute. So we have the usual ship instruction format from Tamiya. We've got a black and white landscape format stapled manual, and on the front here we have a drawing image of the ship we're going to build, and then the box art again, and then when we turn over we get some history in Japanese and then in English, and it talks about conversion to a heavy cruiser, performance in World War II, conversion to an aircraft carrying cruiser, and how she was sunk, and then it goes on to do that in, I think, German by the looks of it, and we have some specifications there. Then we have some conversation around instant cement, because we've got photo etch in there. They talk about photo etch and then give you some painting tips. So prior to painting, remove all dust and oil from the parts. If necessary, wash with detergent, rinse off thoroughly and allowed to air dry. It surprises me how many people say it's a waste of time washing your parts and they never do it, and yet all the decent manufacturers tell you to do that. Okay, then they've got some various preparation advice, recommended tools, and we get our list of required paints. So as you can see, quite a long list for something that's effectively grey, red and brown. But you'd be surprised. Some of these are for lamps, some of these are for the ship's boats, where we've got whites and woods and what have you. But yeah, always a surprising list of paints, I think. Right, so assembly. So this is step one, and the first thing that stands out is it's fairly busy. So if you're a shipbuilder and you're used to trumpeter ships, you would have that on one page, and then you'd have that on the next page, whereas Tamiya will fit more into a box, and for my mind, quite often it's several steps in one box. There's quite a lot of text knocking around, so that also makes them busy. So you have to focus a little bit more than if you were going through, say, I don't know, an Airfix set of instructions or something like that. So it tells you what to do, so you need to read this. It tells you that you've got some things that you shouldn't be cementing, although I can't see. Oh, there it is, the polycaps. And it says make holes. Hopefully they tell you the diameters. Yes, they do, 3mm. So you've got two options here, effectively. If you're building it full hull, then you're putting these supports in. If you're going to do it waterline, then you need to remove the bottom half of the supports and just use the top section. So that's what you do. The polycap's going in at the stern for the rudders to be pushed into, and it tells you if you're using the waterline plate to remove this at the front. And then we've got to drill some holes. That'll be for mounting it. So despite the fact that it would probably look a little daft, you can actually mount this waterline hull onto the display stand if you wished. It will go on there, but it will look a little bit daft. So these bolts that they're putting in here, that actually allows you to bolt that to something else, a base or whatever that you're going to display it on. And I like the fact that they do that, because if you think about a trumpeter kit, you've got to drill those holes yourself, you've got to source your own fasteners. In fact, in these days, they don't even supply you with a base in the kit anymore. So yeah, you've got a lot of stuff that you've got to source yourself, and this is all included in the kit. So when we flip over on two, we've got the two side hull pieces that we're prepping with these brackets, which are, to be honest, it's over-engineered and not really necessary. You could have glued these in without the need of putting screws through brackets. You could have done that with plastic locating points that you just put a little bit of glue in. It's a little bit over-engineered, and it's adding to the cost because you've got metal mechanical fasteners and clips. Yeah, I'm not a fan. I like the fact that they do the separate hull halves like this, because it means that the process of moulding them is crisper and better. But I think the way they put it together is unnecessary. But they talk you through it very clearly. It's telling you what screws to be using and so on. And it also tells you here, make square-shaped holes at the thinly moulded areas shown. So that's clearly for something else that's going to get fitted and then we have to remove a bit from the hull, and that's a bit that you need on there when you're doing the aircraft carrying version. So we've got a little bit of modification to be made. Let's hope it's not too close to a scuttle. We'll see when we look at the plastic. So I don't know, what's that? DP. Don't know what that means. Attached degaussing cable set, item 12630, at this step is recommended. Right, so all Japanese ships, in fact almost all Second World War ships, have degaussing cables on. They all had slightly different solutions. The Japanese, like the British, tended to sling the cables around the outside, clipped onto the upper edges of the outside surface of the hull. And as such, it's a key feature of all of these ships, and so it should be included, but you have to pay for it as a separate item. So they've not moulded it on, which is probably great because it would be a bit chunky and clunky if they moulded it on, but they should put that in and say, right, there you go, here's the degaussing cable. It's one packet of their photo etch. They could easily put it in, but you have to buy it separately, which I personally find a bit annoying. Most manufacturers will mould it on, and then you end up taking it off and put some aftermarket on. But the fact that they don't include it at all is really, I think, a point lost on the overall scoring of the kit, really, because it is necessary if you want to make something that looks fairly accurate, and then you've got to source it yourself, and sometimes it's difficult to find. And in fact, when you do get it, it references the Mogami in the instructions. So yeah, it's always a bit disappointing that you've not got it. And the irony is, it's one of the best degaussing etch sets ever. It's whatever the material is, I don't know, but you can shape it really easily. It's a great little product, but yeah, you've got to get it separately, which is annoying. Right, step 4, and we're putting some more fasteners into the deck. Again, it's belt and braces. For me, it's over-engineered. It does hold the deck down into the hull nicely. It means you don't have to put weights on to hold it down. But you can over-tighten this and you can cause all sorts of problems. You can cause the sides to pop if you haven't tightened the fasteners correctly there. You can create all sorts of issues, and personally, I think it's not necessary and could be done in a different way. And putting a couple of weights on would do exactly the same job as the mechanical fasteners. However, we've got them, and it's nicely shown how to do that. We're putting the nuts in, and we have a little plastic cap that goes over the top that we glue in, and it holds it in place. But yeah, it is a little over-engineered. However, it doesn't detract from the build. Then step 6, and we're putting the shaft lines on, the rudders. I wouldn't be doing this now. I'd put the shaft lines on, but not the actual propellers and not the rudders until back end of the build, because you're likely to knock them off, in fairness. We're also building the stand here now, which makes sense if you want to use it as a build stand and you're going to screw this into place. You can see the screws go up in step 8 from the underside of the stand, so you can take it off at any time. But if you're going to put it in a build jig like I would do, then you can come back and do this at the end. So you're visiting step 6 and step 7 again towards the end of the build. But you can see they've got it mounted on the stand, and they intend for you to build on the stand. Of course, the risk of that is you might get glue and paint on the stand, and if it takes you 6 months to build it, the stand's going to get mucky and dusty and stuff. So think about whether that's the right thing for you to do or not. There's all sorts of solutions. If you've not got a jig, you can put these bolts into the hull so they stick out, and you can mount them in in a vise or set of helping hands and all sorts of things you can possibly do. Step 9 has us doing the torpedo deck. So these are movable. You can see there's polycaps going in, so you can have them swung out. You can hardly see anything through there, so you'll only see what's pointing out. You can see an image of it there. You can't see these torpedoes at all. They're just not visible. If you can see them at all, if you shine a light in, shine a torch off your phone and have a look in, you'll just see the very ends of them anyway. So you could skip doing them, actually. If you want to show the ship as she would be either in port or at sea in sort of pre-war period, then what you can do is you can cover these little holes with canvas covers. So they had canvas covers and they only took them off when they might need to go to action stations. So much of a wartime career, they would have been off all the time so that they were available for use, but in port they wouldn't be. So that's an option. You could do one side with covers on and one side with off, so you've mixed it up a little bit. But I think swinging them out really gives a little bit of animation, and that's always a good thing on a big ship kit. Okay, then we're flipping over to 10 and we're putting the middle decks on top of there. More polycaps going in, and those decks get screwed down as well. Again, be really careful, because if you screw them down too far, they go beyond the little lip that they sit on, and they can force the hull edges to spray out, and you're in a world of hurt if you've not noticed that. We've got more holes to be drilled there. In step 11, we are adding parts to the forecastle. So we've got mushroom vents, and we've got the capstans going on. We've got cable reels going on, and we've got the barbettes, power vanes, and hideous plastic steps. Anyone that's seen my previous Mogami review or has watched me do any Tamiya kit reviews knows that I absolutely hate the plastic steps, and they don't give you an alternative, which is really bad. They do detract from the model because they're in such prominent places throughout the build. We've got a little note there to remove some tabs which look like they're in a really difficult place. This is off C43. That's this part here, so the rear of the 3 guns. Then we go to step 12 and we have another top-down view of the placement. I really like that because it is very clear where they should be and how they should be orientated. Much better instructions than Trumpeter would give you. And then you can see them again being fitted, and then we've got gun tubs being added and more paravanes, and some larger ventilation as well. So this is how I would build. I tend to build up and from the centre out, and they're doing exactly the same. They're doing all the deck fittings now. So we've got various ventilators going on, and then they're putting the first parts of the superstructure on, more horrid, chunky plastic ladders. They really want to be swapped out with photo etch. And at this stage, we're also painting up the little boat here. You can see it gets mounted on the deck. I would recommend, if you want to paint it now to break up what you're doing, you can, but I would recommend putting that on a bit later on. You're going to want to have painted these decks before you put them in anyway, so that you can put all these fittings on. But I would recommend doing that later on, when you can see the relationship of any railing you might be putting on there. Right, step 14 deals with the smokestacks, and you've got this funky swept back arrangement, which is quite unique to Japanese ships, and it does look rather cool, and the extended pipe work as a result of it. We have separate parts to make up the funnel caps, and we've got some separate parts here to make the inside legs, because it sort of splits into a Y. You can see there it's like a little fork. And then we've got some photo etch parts coming on. So this little plate here is photo etch, and I think the one above it is, as I remember. And then we've got more pipe work going in, and there's a little plastic section going in the back of the smokestack there as well. So all very nicely detailed. Then when we flip over, step 16, and we're building the main crane, which is slung off the mast leg, so mast tripod leg. And we've got photo etch being used here again, so you can see the little symbol for CA glue, and it gives you some orientation as well, tells you how it should be and what not to do, which is great. And it's clearly telling you what is not part of the kit. So this is an ejector pin tab, and it's telling you how to remove that. So that's great. And we've got some more photo etch, which makes up some of the cables, but that does fix the crane into a position, and you might want a different position. So you might want to be cutting some of those off and modifying that possibly. Step 17 starts dealing with the aft bridge. So we've got a two-part base there with a ventilator going on. Then we've got a floor going in where we've got a polycap being inserted, and we've got rangefinder there. Then we've got the lamps. You can see 5 different colours, 6 different colours going on the lamps there. Just a dab of paint on each one, and then that gets mounted onto the lower portion of the mast. Then in step 18 we're building up, right, so this mast comes with photo etch parts, and it looks fairly decent when it's done. It's quite a nice little piece of work. And then this is the part where we've got the correction, I believe. Yeah, so part M4 says it's orientated wrong. That doesn't look any different to me. Refer to this image to attach M4 to the face to face the correct direction on step 18 on page 15. So that's definitely that, but it, oh, okay, yeah, they've reversed it. You can see the spur coming off at the back, and they've got the spur at the front. So yeah, okay, we'll tuck that in a sec. We're building up the search lamps. It tells you it's 110 centimeter search lamps, so you know the sizes and stuff. And this is the first part. When you see the plastic, that is disappointing, because that's one lump of plastic. Looks absolutely dreadful, and that easily could have been a bit of photo etch that they folded, or have done it as 3 separate bits of plastic that you glued together in its triangular shape. So that it really detracts from the model, so it needs dealing with. And then you can see us installing all of these little sub-assemblies we've built up over the last couple of pages. So we're building up in the middle, building upwards as I would do. So that's really cool. So we'll flip that over, and there's something else dropping out of the instructions. So what's that? Oh, nothing, warning information. So what we're on, step 19. So searchlight deck around the bridge area. So searchlight deck, we've got some lamps on there, we've got some fittings underneath which are supports, and then we can see this very strange periscope that's used as a central spine for connecting all of the parts as you build up the superstructure, and it's quite interesting because it works really well, and you're pushing parts in. It's quite stable, and it stops you building things and then having to mount something else on top. So yeah, it works quite well as I remember. Then we've got the observation deck being put together, lots of little binocular instruments going in. They call it the Air Defence Command Post. Then you've got the bridge deck, again, lots of observation equipment, and some painting, the navigation lights and what have you, and we've got some anti-aircraft gun going on. So is that the first of the armaments? I think so. More direction finders and so on. And then we carry on building up, and we have a polycap. So the very top rangefinder there, you can move. So you can have it in the direction of your main batteries, which is really interesting. And then just for good measure, another horrid plastic ladder. When we flip over to 20, we're building the large central ventilators. Then we've got the twin 25 mils, anti-aircraft guns being installed then into their gun tubs, and then you can see they get mounted in there, and then we've got some little supports being put in, and you can see their locations there. So C29, C29, L36 at the front. So that's really handy that they give you that view. And again, it's telling you what things are as they go in, more information than you need, but I'd rather have that than not enough. Then we, it's just fallen out. We'll put it in again in a minute. Then we have, what have we got here? Right, then we've got searchlight platforms, and again, two big pieces of plastic, and we've got all these stanchions here with plastic behind filled into them, and it just looks dreadful. You have a big join that you've got to fill, and it's just not possible to do it. Yeah, it's just horrid. You'll see when we come to the plastic, it's nasty. It's such a rubbish solution they came up with there. Then we've got various bits and pieces going in. We've got quite a chunky platform going in here with a plastic ladder on the end, and it does look really out of scale when it's installed. It just doesn't look right. Then we're doing the stern and the stern fittings, and for me, we should have done that when we were doing the foredeck fittings and what have you, because you could paint all of these at the same time and just get it done. So for me, this step is out of place and should have been further up, and I prefer to do all the decks at once and get them done, because we're going back to something we've already completed with, you know, you've got to get your paints out again for the cable reels, which you've already done some. So it always pays off to look forward in your instructions and make sure that you understand what needs to be done, and then you can resequence as you wish. 23, and we've got the gun turrets going together. You can see they've got nice detail on, and they do this funny system with the guns where you can see we've got forward-facing polycaps, so you can plug them in and they're on their low elevation because they've got moulded in blast bags. Or it doesn't show you this here, but you can turn them upside down and cut that off, and they will go in. And they'll be on a high elevation, but they don't show you that there, but it's doable. You just trim that bit off, turn it upside down, plop it in, and it looks great. So if you do want them firing at a longer range, you can do that. But obviously having the blast bags moulded in limits your options. So, you know, it's either you're using blast bags, in which case you're limited to the shape of the blast bag, or you're using brass barrels and making your own blast bags, which not everyone wants to do. So horses for courses there. I think the solution they come up with is great, because you can paint the barrels separately and then install them, rather than the usual way on most manufacturers do, where you're mounting the guns on the base here and then putting the turret over the top. Well, that means you've got to paint the turret before you've glued it in, and there might be filling to do, and yet you've got to have already painted your barrels. So this is a great solution they've come up with, but it does limit you in where you can position your guns. So personally, I prefer to be able to position my guns, and maybe if they could come up with something where those poly caps went into something that was hinged, so you could then move the guns, that would be ideal. But there you go, just my thoughts. But you build it all up, put the sides on, put the rangefinder tops on, and it should all look good. And then, and this is my point here, they've managed to do it here. This antenna mast that goes on this gun here, you can see it there. They've managed to do that as individual parts, put it together, and it's not filled with plastic and doesn't look chunky. So they can do it, and they absolutely wouldn't do all that chunky plastic on a 148 aircraft. So why are they doing it on a 1350 ship? They can absolutely get around that, but they're choosing not to, and it's just not good, really. Anyway, guns are going in, chains going in, flagstaff with the flag on is going in, anchors going in, the marigold at the front is being put on, so they're doing all of that. Now, I would have done the marigold earlier on when we painted the hull, and probably have done the anchors at the same time, and I'd have done the chain when we were doing all of the deck fittings, and I wouldn't be doing that until I come to put my railings on. Also note, we've got some davits here, but the davits are all in their fixed position. Now, if you want to get around that and you want to have some of the boats slung, because these basically hinged up is how they worked, and then they could be swung out. You can get the davits in the upright position in some of the aftermarket sets. So I can't remember if it's in the Tamiya utility set. I think it is, but I think also one of the Hasegawa 1350 ship fitting sets have them as well. I might be wrong about that, but I think the Tamiya utility ship set, which I strongly recommend you get because it's a great set, gives you that option. Step 25 now, and we're building up another frame, and again they've done a lovely job of it. We've got the little I forget the name of them, but they stick out to protect the screws, and we're putting more flags on, and bow anchor and booms are being mounted on as well. So again, that could have been done earlier on in the build. Then we've got secondary armament being built up. Then we're on ship's boats. So giving you detailed cleanup instructions, which is great. Detailed painting instructions, which is better than, again, people like Trumpeter who are prolific at making ship models, but don't quite do the detail that Tamiya do. And then we've got canvas covers going on, all very nice. And then you can see the placement of them going in, and you can use the paint reference sheet for placement because it has a lovely top-down view of it. We'll show you that in a minute. But you can see all these boats going in. That's really nice. Now, when we look at the plastic parts, I think some of them can be improved. And again, the Imperial Navy utility boats set is a good upgrade for some of these. But yeah, very, very nice. Step 29, and we're building up the aircraft. We've got photo etch propellers, which is lovely. A nice simplified build, so it's just detail painting. Then we're building up the catapult trolleys, and you can see them being mounted on. Again, super glue, and then so it tells you what aircraft you're making. So that's a Jake, and then in step 30 we're making a Dave, which is a biplane with again with floats on. So very, very nice. Then when we flip over, we've got the catapults being built up and put in place. They've got some nice detail in them, some internal detail, which is usually ignored. And then these are mounted in, and they're on polycaps, so you can swing them out and change positions, which is great. We've got the little turntables there going in, so you can spin these around and have your aircraft in all sorts of different positions. And then they're also showing you how you can show the planes in flight. So they have these little black hexagonal stands and metal rods. And the metal rods, if you don't use them, put them in your stash. They make all sorts of uses for those, not least for using them as yard arms and things when you're building your own masts. I've used them for all sorts of things in my time. And then you can see some of those planes being placed on the deck. And that completes our build. 31 steps, which is not many for a fairly decent size 1350 kit. And then it talks to us about painting and how to apply decals at the back. So as always, read the instructions clearly before you start building, and think about your way you want to build it and your build process before you go any further. Right, that's your instructions. Let's look at the paint instructions. So in addition to the instructions, you get this full-size paint instructions, and I do love this. We got a double-sided piece here, and this lays in the bottom of the box, so it's not folded or anything. And on this side, we can see we've got this top view and this side profile view, and it's telling us what everything is, from fair leads to cranes to funnels to bridge to rangefinders to paravane ports. It's all in here, and it gives you a good top view of everything, so you can see where things are placed, colours, and so on and so forth. So really, really nicely done. When we turn over to this side, this is actually our paint chart, and again, it's full size. So we can see the just a bit of the red because they've sort of waterlined it, and you can see that pretty much everything else is the same grey, but it is telling you the Tamiya paint colours for all this, so you can then convert that into your chosen paint system. But mainly you're going to be using a lot of grey, and then you've got the deck tan colour that you need to be putting down for the linoleum, because there's no wood decks on this, and there's actually very little steel decks. It's pretty much all anti-slip. It's sort of gangways and areas around some of the guns and the forecastle here that tends to be steel deck. So yeah, gives you a good view of what you should be doing. So yeah, very nice. So let's carry on and see what else we've got in the box. Right, next item out of the box is this bag, and it's got all sorts of little goodies in there. So let's have a look what we've got. All sorts of bits dropping out. So we've got, firstly, we've got the stickers for the base, which I dislike intensely. Why? Because Tamiya have chosen to put their logos on, so I really dislike that. And this says Japanese Heavy Cruiser Mogami, which I have no problem with. And I understand, someone told me when I built the Mogami last time, that this says the same as the English, but in Japanese. And I quite like that. And I think when I did the Mogami last time, I chose to put one on one side and one on the other. But it looks really nice in the Japanese, but then they spoil it because I don't want Tamiya logo on my display stand because it makes it look like a toy. So we have to cut that off, which means it's then short. So what I ended up doing was using some of the Japanese writing over the Tamiya logo and sort of cutting it out and making bits up. But I think what I'm going to do is just cut the Tamiya logo off and use that and maybe put the Japanese flag behind it like that, which I think would look pretty cool. Anyway, that brings me neatly onto the flags, which are made on tissue paper and are truly dreadful because they are so transparent. Firstly, it doesn't look white, and when you fold them up, it's really difficult to align them and they become a bit see-through, and they've got this horrid black line around the edge, which is truly dreadful because the real flag doesn't have that. So you really don't want that on. They're just really bad. And the best thing you can do with them is throw them away and get some aftermarket ones, which is what I will use. I'll use some photo etch ones when I come to build this. But yeah, I really dislike these. They're better than stickers, but they're not much in it really. It would be nicer if they were decals, and then you could put them on some foil, cut them out, and shape them. So a lost opportunity there. I'm not sure what this is. I don't remember seeing this in the last one. Looks like a template for something. So it must be referencing the instructions, which I didn't see. But it looks like you cut it out and it's a template for something or other, like a turret top or something. I don't know. And then finally, our decals. Now then, you've already got ahead of me. If you've seen my my videos before on ships, you've already got ahead of me on these decals, haven't you? So everyone that watches my videos knows what I'm about to say. Isn't that strange? The tissue paper that they're going to put on the front to protect it, not only is it not attached, so it's not really protecting it, it's a lot bigger. That's strange. Anyway, yeah, firstly, these are Tamiya decals. So they are lumpy. They are really, really heavy and thick. I can see imperfections in them. They're that thick. And they have lots and lots and lots of decal fill margin. They're just poor. And the one thing I'd like Tamiya to do more than anything is sort out their dreadful decals, because they are really, really poor. And when these are all aimed at going on an aircraft that is really small, it's not helpful. So you've got a decal here for the windows of one of the aircraft. I did use them and they were okay, but they weren't brilliant. It's not a brilliant solution. The rising sun, what looks like a flag here isn't a flag. It's to go on top of one of the turrets, but you're better painting it on, to be honest, because it doesn't sit very nice on all that texture. And then we've got the bits for the tail, bits for the floats, as I remember, the national markings for the wings. I think those go on the floats, as I remember, and some other bits I can't remember what they're for. But what have we not got? We've not got depth markers. That's what everyone had already said, had already shouted at the screen. No depth markers. I would like the flags to have been decals as well, so we really need to expand these decals. All ships have depth markers, so why they don't put them on, I don't know. So yeah, it's just really annoying. But there's also other decals that could be put on. So the Mogami in Japanese for the ship's boats, for example, they could do that. They do tiny stencils for their aircraft. Why don't they do tiny stencils for the ships? their ship kits are poor relations to their other kits, to be honest, and it's a real shame because they've got the potential to be the very best manufacturer of ship kits, and unfortunately I don't think they are. But yeah, they're lackluster in so many ways. Let's move on. Right, plastic parts, and we're starting with the lower hull, and you have to say it's very nice. So we got a single piece plastic hull that they've done in red plastic, so you can effectively build the model as they've supplied it without painting it, and you get something that's not too bad, other than the decks, which wouldn't be the brown. So you wouldn't be a million miles off. So a kid, if they wanted to just build it, they could get away with it. But yeah, what we've got is we've got a nice piece of single deck there. It does need a little bit of clean up, as all big moulded parts always do. So we have a centre which has got a couple of connection points that need to be cleaned up, so you can just feel them under my finger. So we've got that, and there's another one there. So we need to clean up, but there's no centre seam. This has been slide moulded, and so your seams are actually here. They run from the bilge keel, and it goes up to the weld seam that they've moulded in, which is absolutely lovely, and then it follows the mould seam. How brilliant is that? So you only need to clean up that little section there, and then here at the back we have another one, this time that goes all the way across all of these and ends at this point here. So you've got some gentle sanding to do in between these. Now, when I talked about this on the last review, someone said, "Are you sure that's not supposed to be a weld seam?" No, it's not. No, it absolutely isn't. But because it looks slightly different to the weld seams, it's not quite as pronounced. But yeah, it definitely should be removed. But you could probably get away with leaving it on and no one would really know. But yeah, it's very, very nicely done. We've got the little location points for the propellers, shaft lines, termination points where they enter into the hull. We've got depressions there for locating the shaft line A-frames, and then we've got our little outlets for the rudder. So yeah, all very, very nice. And then you can see we've got all these weld seams going along the full length. Now, Japanese ships were electro welded for weight saving. They weren't riveted. And then when we get to the front bit here, we'll see a little line there that just drops between the two. That's also a seam and needs to be removed. And then you have another seam somewhere there, here. So that's where the slide moulding tool went in. So the slide tool was almost the full length of the stern, and we can see that there. There's a little witness there, and then you have a centre line to the front. So you need to remove that all very, very carefully. Here we've got, they're not hydrophones, they're sonar. And then we've got the paravane location points. So yeah, all very nicely done. Now, it looks like there is sink here in the bow, but I think it's just flow of plastic. And actually, when you put some primer on, you'll know for sure. But I think it all looks pretty good. And the the bilge keels are lovely. They're nice and thin. They're not a great big wedge of triangulation. They look really, really good. Tamiya have done an awesome job. These things here, I think they're sea chests. Not 100% sure, but I think they're water intakes for boilers and the like. Now then, this is the waterline. So what you can actually do is paint this in your anti-fouling red, which is a dark red-brown colour for Japanese ships, and then build your hull on top of it, having already painted this in to your waterline. So it's a great way of painting without having to mask off. So yeah, so really nice and easy, well thought through. Yeah, it's a lovely hull. Nothing bad I can say about it. And they've even put you in the holes for where you want to mount it. But if you don't want to mount it the way they've done, you don't have to drill through, because you know they've given you that option as well. So it's really cool. And it says PS, which is polystyrene, so you know the material, which they put on all of their sprues, so you know what glue you should be using, which I always think is good. That we will keep an eye on as we go through the build. Right then, that's our lower hull done. Let's have a look at what's next out of the box. Now, I'm not going to get this out of its bag. It comes in a staple bag like all the other parts does. But this is effectively your waterline. So if you want to build your model from the waterline up, then again, you can spray the edge of this in your red-brown before you build it up, and you've got the lower hull covered off. And then you can drill holes through to mount it onto some form of base, or you can just leave it as it is. Yeah, I'm glad that Tamiya continue to do this, because Trumpeter used to, and now they don't bother anymore, and that's a backward step for me. So upper hull sections are the next out of the box, and they're not the only manufacturer that do it this way, but we've got two halves in this big frame. And the reason why they do that, because if you're familiar with Trumpeter kits where they have it waterlined, they mould this as one single piece that you slot on top. The advantage of doing it this way, and most other companies do it this way, is that you can get, firstly, it probably costs a bit less in the way of tooling to do that, but they can get a little bit more detail in, and you don't get the distortion that you will do doing it as a single. And we can see that paying off on this. It's a very curved lip that we've got on the bow here. It's not just curving out, it's curving out to create a wider deck as well. So this flare would create a lot of distortion on the scuttles, and there's none. It's really nice. And again, we've got all the welding seams and bits and pieces running along the full length. And then as we chug down, we've got little fair leads already moulded in. Then we've got the waste chutes there, and then as we come down, we've got the openings for the torpedo tubes. Hand irons are moulded on. We've also got a little davit moulded on, which I think most upgrade sets would probably replace that. And if you can see these little elliptical shapes in there's one there as well, in the side of the hull there, they should be open. They should be open for rainwater to run out from the upper deck, the deck that goes on top of the torpedo deck there. So you've got an option of opening those out before you fit it if you want. Then we've got more fair leads. There's our little lump that we have to remove. You use that in the aircraft carrying version, but not on this. And then, so it's not too close to the scuttles. What you want to do is put some masking tape over the scuttles on either side, and and sand it off. And when you're getting, when your sander touches this area where the scuttle is, it's actually hitting the masking tape. So yeah, but still a bit of care to take that off. And then we've got these funny lumps here, and they are actually for protecting the propellers. So you have one that you glue on, a larger one, and then you have this smaller one that they've moulded in. And I understand why they've done it, but you want to take that off and replace that with a little bit of wire, really. And then we've got more hand irons at the back, and then we've got these little cutouts which I think are for a boom, and typically you'd have the ship's boats would dock against that boom, and that's why you've got hand irons at the stern there, because people can then clamber onto the ship from there, and then a fair lead at the back. It's all beautifully done. It is very eloquent moulding, and of course there is no there's no flash. I don't see any sink. So you've got on the inside, you've got these moulded areas where you're going to put those little metal clips, and they're not creating sink. So yeah, it's really, really nice. There's nothing that I would say I would like to have seen done differently. Tamiya are never going to do that in photo etch for you. To stick on, but it does mean that you've not got an option of having it swung out, and I like to animate my models where I can. So yeah, let's not assume that everyone wants to have everything stowed away all the time. So yeah, very nice, very, very nice. So that is part A. Let's take some photos of that, I think. Again, another bag I'm not going to open, but in here we've got all sorts of bits and pieces. From their standard screwdriver, which has a nice swivelling head, to our shaft lines, our polycaps, our clips and mechanical fasteners, and we also have some anchor chain in there. You can see we've got two pieces, and they've blackened it in some way or other, but it's a bit shiny, and personally think you need to either paint that. But if you're a youngster and you're building this for the first time and it's your first model, you can just glue that on, and it looks super cool because it's a separate anchor chain, and it looks like that. So, you know, if you're not painting it, it's something else that breaks up all that grey plastic. So yeah, all those bits in there. I don't want to open the bag, so there's nothing to look at close up, so we won't bother.